Welcome along to Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden Williams here. And as I said in the intro, my guest this week is a menswear designer, and it's Max Foucault. Welcome, Max. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Hayden.
Oh, you're so welcome. And yeah, unusual for the pod. Speak to journalists occasionally, but I don't think I've spoken to many people from the menswear world. Obviously, I had Marc Antoine Barrois on last season, who has tuxedos and shirts and things like that. But I was fascinated by your story. And I suppose what's really exciting is it's still quite early in your career. So, we're talking to someone who's been very intentional with both fashion, menswear, and fragrance, and putting, and making sure those worlds kind of collide, and that you have both things in your arsenal. But I'd love to know, first of all, you're based in London, but you're originally from Paris, and you were brought up in LA. So there's three very distinct cities there. Do you think they're reflected in your collections?
Yeah, definitely. So I was born in Paris. The first few years of my life are yeah, in France, and then
Yeah.
my parents decided to move to California. They had been over on a holiday on vacation, and they absolutely loved the lifestyle. Wanted something a bit more relaxed,
Right.
and so
And did
yeah,
they
grew
have
up
sort
under.
of jobs to go to in LA? Was there specific
Yeah, I
careers that they
mean,
wanted to
yeah,
follow?
my dad was in the food and beverage industry.
Oh, is he?
Um, yeah, so very different to what I'm undertaking, and I've always been kind of taught to follow my curiosities, and so here
Yeah.
I am. I've always been drawing, making pieces, designing. So
And
yeah,
did it
studied.
start from illustration and drawings, and then move into textiles?
Yeah, definitely. So I've always been drawing my whole life. They thought I was colorblind when I was a kid because they'd lay out all the crayons, markers, and I would always pick out the black every time. And I
Really?
found my niche of, black illustrations, black paintings. And then later on as a teenager, I started screen printing those drawings on t-shirts, and that's essentially how I started getting into it. Had a little streetwear line in high school, and
Did you all,
selling.
all the way back to high school? That was early.
Yeah, yeah, and then so that kind of flourished the love to kind of sell the pieces I wanted to make, have my friends wear it. But then there was that curiosity of how to actually make clothes. So then had my French grandmothers teach me how to pattern make and sew
Amazing.
at an early age, and then eventually studied fashion business in downtown LA. But it didn't really give me that same fulfillment. I was always
Mm.
creative, so Central St. Martin's kind of was that
That's
avenue of
one of the
creativity.
best places to come, right?
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. So you graduated in 2023, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, a few years
And
ago now.
yeah, it is. For people who are perhaps unfamiliar with your designs, how would you best describe your style as a designer?
Definitely workwear and tailoring focused.
Yeah.
So I've always been influenced by my two grandfathers. One was an agricultural farmer, so I always saw him in like rugged denim workwear growing up, and the
Yeah.
other, on a contrast, was a city businessman in Paris. So I always saw him in refined suits. So it's these two worlds, and my narrative and brand is really always a research and reference point, starting with those two idols in a sense, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, continuing that along.
And I can definitely see that in just some of the images on your site. You're definitely fusing those two worlds, and some of it feels quite sort of directional, and much more interesting and sort of design led. But the workwear style is very wearable. Some beautiful silhouettes, and some great fabrics. And I suppose being at somewhere like Central St. Martin's, you mentioned the narrative style. That I imagine it gives you scope to really lean into to thinking about what you want to say, as much as about the technical side of things. And you can definitely see that sort of narrative style in what you're doing. There does seem to be storytelling there.
Definitely, yeah. I think Central St. Martin's really pushes the students to have a hold on the storytelling and the narrative you want to tell, before necessarily the quality of the craftsmanship. They are
Yeah.
really, what do you want to tell as a designer? And
Mm.
then they'll question you question your authenticity. Why are you looking into this? Whereas, some other universities, they want to hone in on, was this perfectly made? Why was it made this way? So I was really, yeah, blessed with that opportunity. And then I worked for a Savile Row bespoke tailor for a number
Did
of
you?
years. So that really gave me that
Mm.
love for, quality made pieces and how to properly
Yeah.
construct clothes.
Oh my goodness! I only went for a couple of hours, but I was in Huntsman on Savile Row a couple of weeks ago, and just was in one of the upstairs room, and I saw some of the the pattern cutting rooms and stuff. And I mean, the heritage and the tradition of some of the tailors on that street. I mean, for someone who lives and breathes menswear, it must have been such a great experience, and you must have soaked up so much when you were there.
Absolutely. And it's, it's the birth of tailoring, that one
Yeah,
street in
yeah,
London. And,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it goes back many hundreds of years. And, when prince and royalties and from all over would come to get suits made. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it
lots of them
was
have
a,
got their royal crests, haven't they? Of different monarchs and princes
yeah,
that get their suits there. Yeah,
yeah. So that was nice to have that a bit as the training ground to cut some teeth. And,
absolutely.
yeah, it's a small world over there. All the tailors know each other. So,
Yeah,
and I've stayed in touch with the tailor, and he's a bit of a mentor. And I pop in to see him and get his feedback on what I'm working on, and vice versa, and see if I
oh,
can help
that's
him in
great.
any way. And
And it might be a funny question, but
hmm,
a lot of designers, I don't know, maybe see women's wear as the ultimate. Was it very intentional for you to work in the menswear space from the get go? I mean, I suppose there's always scope to do whatever you like, but is it unusual to focus on menswear first?
I wouldn't say it's unusual. It's what you're most curious about and
Yeah,
what
of
you're
course.
most passionate about. And in the beginning, is I wanted to make clothes for myself and my friends,
Mm,
and yeah, so it made sense to, yeah, pursue menswear, in
yeah,
that way. But definitely the door is hopefully open down the road to do some
yeah,
women's wear. Already
yeah.
this first collection, I've had a couple of girls model for
I
model
saw that. Yeah,
in the
on your
runway.
site,
Yeah.
there's some women who are modeling the clothes, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's an open-ended, it's not meant just for one person. If
Mm,
it speaks to
mm.
you, then it's for you.
I love that. And you recently showed your collection at Paris Fashion Week. How did that go?
Yeah, that was a great experience having kind of
Was
my
it?
first showroom presentation. I was working with a sales agency that had reached out and they were interested in representing my brand, and we were alongside a few other brands they work with. So it was really great to be with a couple heavyweights and be alongside them, because obviously I'm starting out, but they
Yeah,
were, 10, 20 years, 30 years down the line. So it was nice to see how they work, and yeah, and get good feedback from the store buyers and journalists that came by and looked at the clothes. And it was one of those things where I let the pieces speak for themselves. I'm there
yeah.
to, introduce the brand, but all the work's been done. It's there to be processed and taken.
I suppose there's that commercial side of the industry that one has to learn about as well, isn't there? Because as much as you're the embodiment of the brand and you're designing it, but you also have to face up and sell it in a way, and talk about commercial agents, or at least be the sort of focal point, and someone that these various sales agents and buyers can talk to. And I suppose you have to get used to that side of things, don't you? Traveling around, visiting these different fairs and exhibitions, and talking about
Mm.
your clothes in a commercial sense.
Yeah, definitely. And it's if it, I would love to spend months and even years just nitpicking on the dyeing, the pattern cutting, like all these things I love
Mm,
doing. But you have to, there needs to be a result and a conclusion to the project. And so
yeah,
for this collection, I worked with a lot of artisanal dyers and specialized manufacturers to really make the pieces. Because even though I can, you know, make the collection from A to Z on my own, I'm also thinking about, scaling down the line without rushing it and still being authentic to the brand, but working with
Yeah,
all these tradespeople that can really help make and create the pieces alive.
that's what's great about fashion, isn't it? Working with other artisans and talk about some of the textile mills or people that you work with. It is such a collaborative process, and I imagine as a designer, you have to pay real attention to the provenance of products and where things are coming from. And it's lovely that there's this whole ecosystem around that. By you doing what you're doing and designing certain clothes, you're supporting the wider clothing and textile industry, aren't you?
Yeah, it's giving a job and an opportunity for craftsmen to, you know,
Yeah.
take on a brand because a lot of Savile Row, a lot of the makers or cutters, some of them will be freelance, and you have to
Oh,
know
okay.
them for them to take on a project. But you have the in-house workers, but then you have some that are freelance that work for different projects on the side.
Yeah. Look, we'll talk much more about your collection and the fact that, as I mentioned at the beginning, that you have three fragrances as well. But the podcast is Man in the Mirror, and I'm always really interested to find out about the guest morning and evening routine and how grooming and skincare factors into their lives, albeit in a small or large way. So I wonder with you, Max, what does your morning and evening routine look like? What kind of products do you use?
So first thing when I wake up, I absolutely need a shower to get going in the morning
Yeah.
because I feel like a completely different person. I don't know about you or anyone else, but I am like knocked out when I wake up. I'm becoming not a morning person. So knowing that I need a shower, it's like I've just ran a marathon after a shower.
Yeah.
It wakes up my mind and my body. So yeah, definitely shower, morning
And do you
routine,
have
have some
certain sort of,
breakfast.
are there kind of shower gels or certain bath products that you like, or is this whatever's in the shower tray?
I quite like Aesop if I'm being
Yeah.
specific with
Yeah. It's
with the
nice
brand.
stuff.
So yeah, and yeah, I like their different products that they have, and they've collaborated with
Beautiful brand.
a few designers over the years. So I
Mm,
quite like their kind of direction.
yeah. It has a very specific sort of apothecary kind of look, doesn't it? Those sort of ambery bronzed bottles, they're great.
Yeah, it's more minimalist and
Mm,
it's not too loud. And then as well, kind of their experience when you walk into their stores. Each store has been like architecturally designed to be unique from one
yes.
another. And when you walk in, they just they're really attentive to what you need, which is
They've
it's
got
one of
some
the
beautiful. I
few
went.
stores that
They've
does
got
that.
yeah. There's a store in, strangely enough, in Blue Water Shopping Centre, but the reference point was some sort of 50s American bowling alley. So this
Mm.
beautiful blonde, sort of polished wood everywhere, and old vintage bowling skittles and balls. It's just really cool, and I'm still not really sure what the connection is with Aesop. I'm sure there is something somewhere, but yeah, just as you say, the design of them is always very singular and very intentional. Do you like the fragrances too?
Yeah, I like some of the fragrances. I think more of the skincare and
Yeah,
the shampoos speak to me, but they definitely have some fragrances that are unique,
yeah.
stand out.
So anything else? You've had your shower. Is there anything you put on your face or hair that you particularly like or you're drawn to?
Not too crazy, just a little moisturizer and then get the day going. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
good. And then in terms of fragrance, Max, are you loyal to your own brand or do you try other stuff?
I definitely wear mostly my own three, the trilogy,
Good to hear.
um, to see and kind of play around with all three. But I do like trying out other perfumes and fragrances and testing, seeing what's out there. But
Mm.
mostly wear my own.
I suppose that can be a double-edged sword, can't it? And I've talked to other brand founders, and I guess there's that thing where you kind of, it's useful to understand the marketplace and what's going on and trends and all that stuff. But at the same time, I suppose that you want to keep the purity of what you're doing and not be influenced too much by what else is going on. It
Hmm.
must be a tricky balance, wasn't it? Because yeah, you don't want to you subconsciously copy something else or take ideas, but yeah, how do you approach that? Do you try to kind of keep quite singular about what you're doing?
Yeah, I think as long as the narrative is like authentic and makes sense to the project, designing these first three fragrances was really interesting to work with the nose and actually present imagery for these three separate stories for each bottle. Um, and that was a really fun experience and very different to designing clothes, where it was
Yeah,
really, uh, three fragrances have kind of inspired by the three environments that I've spent most of my life. So being born in Paris, then growing up in LA, and now based in London. So really, LA is Ombre Solaire. That one's the most refreshing scent out of the three. You're on the beach, sun's hitting the salty ocean. You have the greenery from the palm trees.
nice.
Um, that one I would say is one of the best sellers. It's the easiest to wear, really refreshing, kind of a summer scent, but
Yeah.
really good all year round. And then you have Ombre Vivante, inspired by London. Tailors takes you to a tailor's atelier on Savile Row. So when I worked for a bespoke tailor, going every morning in their space, you'd smell all the tweeds, the different cloths being steamed, and we worked with a beeswax, a honey beeswax, to strengthen the threads when we're
Oh,
sewing. So you had
yeah.
these like really honey sweet notes come in throughout the day. Um, and it was just a really amazing environment to be in, taking it in, all these different notes, and as well little metallic thimble notes from when we're sewing,
Oh,
kind
okay.
of, um, and then
So it
as well,
sounds like
and
they're
then
very
yeah,
autobiographical, these fragrances, Max.
yeah, I think so. This first collection definitely is personal, personal
Mm.
story, but I think it's can be relatable, and it's been really interesting to present it to, um, you know, different people coming and smelling and trying them out at exhibitions and Perfume Week, and people who have not been to those places, they feel like they're being teleported to those areas, being they're traveling to LA for the first time just by smelling
Yeah.
that fragrance, and then yeah, and finally, the just to finish off, the third fragrance, Ombre Nocturne, is the
Yeah.
one inspired by Paris. So that one's an old world Paris when the fashion houses were starting out. It's
Right.
really powdery, inspired by the silk garments of the time. I forgot to mention each fragrance is inspired by a fabric or a cloth. So LA
Okay.
is LA is denim, London is tweed, and Paris is silk.
Amazing. And you mentioned working with a nose. Did you work with the same perfumer on all three, Max?
Yeah, it was the same perfumer, same nose. His name is Eric Gigodeau. So he
Right.
comes from a family of noses, and his dad uh, was quite known in the industry, Jean-Claude
Yeah.
Gigodeau. And that was a really, right time, right moment in my final year at Central St. Martin's. I went to visit family in the south of France, and we went to
Yeah.
visit a perfume museum. And
Yeah.
I just met him and stumbled upon and had shown him some of my
Ah,
designs. He really loved it, and yeah, and offered to create some perfumes for my graduate collection. But it became more than that. It was not just, okay, we're going to make one scent, one fragrance. It's going to be, this will be a viable product, and we're going to do, at least three, because it's an industry standard to do maybe five or six. But I
yeah.
thought, same with the fashion industry, some of these houses that push out 60 to 100 looks, it feels a bit excessive. And
Yeah.
my personal opinion at the moment is, to have that five or six feels a bit heavy. And if we can, tone it down to quality over quantity. So I felt like three
Yeah.
perfumes was a good start to
Three's
begin.
yeah. Three's the magic number, as they say. And what a serendipitous meeting that you kind of met the nose and you both connected, because it really is about that relationship and understanding, isn't it? And obviously you then trialing and taking the various mods and being clear about what you want, but such an important relationship, and you found them in you found your nose in the south of France. Perfect.
Yeah, it was great. So it's all made in Grasse. And
Yep.
that process was really interesting because at some parts I was in the south of France, but I'm mostly based in London. So he would send me kind of vial samples for each one,
Mm,
and I would get maybe, a variety of 10 that followed kind of the prompt and the brief that I'm giving for the story. And then I'd come back and smell the 10 for one of them and say, okay, number three and number seven really speak to me. I think that
yeah.
really tells the memory that I want to show. And then he'd come back and, do a combination or play around with it.
Yeah.
But I've always been interested in perfumes and fascinated by it. I didn't know how I would get into it, but my dad, even my grandparents collected perfume. I
Oh,
always saw it
really?
around the house. Yeah, they had like when we'd go back to visit my grandparents, they had my dad's old, it was like a treasure chest of perfume bottles from when he was a
Okay.
kid and a teenager. So even really young, I would see these different bottles, and before even smelling, it was looking at the design of the bottle. And I remember
Yeah.
thinking, someone designed this. It's someone's
Yeah.
job to design this. So I think also designing the bottle is something really special as well.
You're absolutely right.
And
I think, we often don't talk quite as much about the physical, tangible, 3D side of perfumery. And of course, it's got to be about the juice and how it speaks to us, but it's still a physical object that transmits beauty by being there, and there's a story to tell in the packaging and the bottle and all those things. You're absolutely right. And so you got to experience a lot of fragrance when you were younger from your dad and your granddad. I mean, what kind of fragrances did you like as a teenager in LA?
I remember I had um, an older version of the Eau Sauvage from Dior, not
Yeah,
the
yeah,
current one with Johnny Depp, but the one from like the 80s and
yeah.
90s. That was a more classic one. So I remember wearing that one. Yeah, and my granddad, I think he wore that one, so he kind of put me put me onto that one.
Yeah. And in terms of the fragrances now, do you see fragrance running in tandem with your menswear collections all the time? Do you think it's going to be a signature of your house that there's an olfactive side to it as well?
Yeah, I think it gives a 4D element to my design world, and that's
Yeah,
what
interesting.
was, an inspiration, kind of like, okay, thinking about head to toe, how am I presenting this look, this person, but also, how are they smelling when they enter the room? How do you present
Mm,
yourself?
yeah,
So yeah, it's kind of uh, a separate avenue, but it elevates the clothes and they work together. Um, so yeah,
I
I think
think
I'll
so too.
definitely be continuing, with that
Yeah,
at a slow pace. I don't want to rush myself.
yeah.
I'm not trying to push out like a new collection every season. So, with the clothes and the fragrances, I want to take my time to have, spend the time to research and experiment and
They
have
come when it's
really
right. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, really, I mentioned in the intro having fragrances quite so early in your career. I mean, it's a sort of, I totally understand. I love that idea of the sort of the fourth dimension of what you're doing, but it's obviously in a very important part of your ideology that you wanted the olfactive side of it to be there from the get go. I mean, I guess it's much more common in the bigger brands and the chains that there's a sort of that there might be a fragrance and a different line, but I think this does feel it is niche and artisanal. It's not like you're in 100 chain stores, so you've got to have a fragrance on the counter. I mean, this is quite specialist. So
Yeah,
I just find it
yeah.
really interesting that fragrance was part of the story from such from so early in your career.
I think perfumery and designing a fragrance is an art form, same as painting, making a film.
Mm,
And, it's just a stereotype that big houses will eventually do a fragrance line. But at that stage, then it becomes a bit of a money-making scheme, and it can be
yeah,
difficult to
yeah,
see it as an authentic
yeah,
project. So regardless, I think it was important to start it when we did in the beginning because it was right place, right time.
yeah,
Uh, um,
yeah. You're
yeah,
sort
it
of
was.
capitalizing on the opportunity that was presented, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I guess in some of the big fashion chains, often they just end up licensing the whole thing out and don't really have that much control over it, which seems to be the
Mm.
polar opposite here. It's it is intentional and telling your telling your story of the sort of the trilogy of places that are important to you. It's really
Yeah,
fascinating, isn't
yeah.
it? Yeah,
I think fashion and fragrance go coincide together, same as music and films. You know, you need
yeah,
costumes for a film, you need music for a runway, or how does it sound, how does it look? And fragrance is completely that combination.
yeah. No, I totally agree. So, Max, the name of the podcast is Man in the Mirror, and I think this is particularly interesting with you. You know, you're a younger guy, but you're in the fashion world. I wonder how you feel about the man that looks back at you in the mirror.
I would say I'm not particularly, gazing and spending time to just, look at myself. Um, but,
Right.
just making sure I'm happy, I'm good, and health is wealth, and
Yeah.
it's a continual kind of by routine and habit, eating right, working out,
Mm.
all that good stuff.
But are you sort of cognizant of the fact that because you're in a world where it is about appearance and people are looking at you as well as your collection, and you are the sort of focal point of the brand. Does
Mm.
how you present and how you show up, is that, are you aware of it? Is it something that each time you're out, do you feel like you need to be wearing your stuff, and is the physical embodiment of it important and something that you're aware of?
I mean, to an extent, but I'm not dwelling over it. I'm just going to
Mm.
be myself and,
Not trying
just
to
how I
make you
want to.
paranoid.
Yeah, no, no, but it's
You know
true in
what I
the
mean?
fashion
Like,
industry. Yeah, yeah,
you
of
often
course,
think
yeah.
about the person at the name of a designer, or the name of a brand.
Yeah,
That's the
I say
embodiment
to
of
an
that's the
ex
person, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I say to an extent because you have some of the greatest designers out there, from Alexander McQueen, um, to Tom Ford or Galliano,
Mm.
how they presented themselves. McQueen, for example, was notoriously not necessarily dressing
Yeah.
how he designed, but
It's
then you can
true.
look at Tom Ford, who's always in suits. So
Yeah. Yeah.
to each his own, but yeah, just being dressing authentically or how I want.
Yeah. And finally, Max, I ask every guest. I'm always interested in what makes you happy. Perhaps outside of the work that you're doing, are there things that you do to relax and kind of take the pressure off?
I mean, I'm always thinking about the next project and the next thing.
Really?
I wouldn't say I'm a workaholic, but I absolutely love what I do. So I'm always working
Yeah.
on the next collection, the next project. But I love spending time with my girlfriend, with my family. I love being outside in nature. We live by forest, so just being under the trees, breathing in the air. When fashion, you are in the studio most of the
Yeah.
time. Um, and then as well, I love films. If I wasn't designing clothes or fragrances, I think I'd be a film director because
Would you?
I love being teleported into another world when you're at the cinema.
Mm.
From Alfred Hitchcock to David Lynch, kind of some of the older films really speak to me.
Yeah. I suppose it's interesting as well, talking about, needing time to decompress with friends and girlfriends and family and stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
do you find that is actually your design work, is it quite solitary, or are you in a studio with other people?
So I have my own studio, but because I work with artisanal dyers and craftsmen, I have to go
Mm.
to their space,
Mm.
or vice versa, and so it's quite nice. Like every day looks is different. I'm not just sitting in one spot. I could be,
Yeah.
to work with other people to make the vision happen. Uh, Requires to be on the move at times.
Yeah, which is good. It gives you some variety.
Yeah, yeah. But there are weeks at a time where I'm just pattern cutting, pattern
Head
making.
down.
Yeah, on a call with the nose to get the notes right, get the storyline right. So it really
Yeah.
varies.
Well, Max, thank you so much. I know we're going to meet in person next week, which I'm really looking forward to. And congratulations on the collection. I genuinely love some of those pieces, and I'm really keen to see how your career progresses. And I think it's a fascinating combination of both menswear and bringing fragrance in at such an early stage. And look forward to meeting you properly next week. Thank you so much for your time on Man in the Mirror. And take care. See you next week.
Thank you, Hayden. I do want to say really quickly, are you still recording? Yeah.
Yeah,
I do want
yeah.
to say I do want to say really quickly, I have just want to give you your flowers because your podcast is very niche and different
It is
to
niche.
some of the other podcasts out there where it's just friends on a couch talking about anything and everything. So it's nice to be part of a project that is it's really unique and niche where you have these different perfume industry CEOs and aficionados take part. So thank you for having me on.
My goodness, that's really kind of you. Thank you. Yeah, I suppose I'm trying to do the opposite of bros on a sofa talking about anything. I think almost to a fault, it is quite niche. But yeah, I love these conversations, and I think it's always fascinating. You know, we all have, as you talk about, everyone has to wear clothes, and similarly, everyone goes out there and has an opinion on their appearance. And I just felt I wasn't hearing that conversation very much, but it turns out it's a really fascinating way in to have just great conversations with guys. So that's very kind of you, and I appreciate it. And it was really lovely to spend some time with you, Max. And I know my listeners will enjoy it too. So you take care, and I'll see you next week in person.